before COVID, we had flu and we had cold, right? And then everybody's had a cold. They feel crummy for a while, but everybody thinks of flu as like cold symptoms plus fever and muscle aches, and you're knocked on your behind for like 4 or 5 days, right? The issue with COVID is that there's such a wide range of symptoms that people show, from no symptoms at all to dead in 2 to 3 days. Flu, colds, COVID, okay? These are all caused by viruses. And something that I'm telling all my patients is that, every virus that existed before COVID still exists. So, but there's no way to tell you really that it's not COVID for sure unless you get tested.
And it's challenging because especially this time of the year where these other cold weather ailments do impact us, and those symptoms are so similar. Fever, cough, congestion, body and muscle aches. Those are very common symptoms of a number of respiratory viruses, including COVID. Generally speaking, if you have those symptoms now in this COVID era, you have to assume that COVID is the cause until you can prove that it's not.
I want to emphasize that it's really important that you call your doctor, because we don't want people going to the doctor, and by going to the doctor exposing others in that way, either in the transportation, in the waiting room. So please first call your doctor. Now, once you talk to your doctor, either over the phone or through telehealth, the doctor will have some recommendations for you.
Although there are symptoms that are classic of COVID, and although there are symptoms that are a little more specific to COVID, any collection of viral symptoms are enough for me to recommend testing.
Here in Southwestern Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, we have free clinics. People can contact those free clinics by phone, and actually the state and the county has resources to do this test for free, even if you don't have health insurance. But again, what I was saying before, please make sure you contact your doctor first by phone or by telehealth.
Other symptoms include shortness of breath, chest pain. People can have altered mental status.
Loss of sense of smell and taste are pretty specific. So and it's not just I'm congested and I can't smell as much. It is like a true, I keep putting this to my nose and I can't smell it. That is something that's pretty specific to COVID. Even if you get tested and come back negative, I'm still gonna treat you like you have COVID.
And that's what we call pathognomonic, or extremely characteristic of only COVID. Influenza doesn't do that. The common cold doesn't do that. Strep throat doesn't do that. Pneumonia doesn't do that. So other symptoms would include gastrointestinal symptoms. People can present with diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain. So there are a number of non-traditional symptoms associated with COVID as well. Another one of the symptoms that we're also seeing a lot of is this extreme fatigue. People are calling it the COVID sleep, where people just cannot stay awake and they will sleep for 15, 16, 20 hours. So if you find yourself unusually tired, meaning you can't attribute it to children, you can't attribute it to work, then you have to then assume again that this may be a COVID-related symptom. You want to have a level of, I guess, what we would call situational awareness. If you are starting to experience these symptoms in any way, then the next step for you would be to seek out opportunities to be tested.
A large number of my patients have multiple generations in their family. There's the kids, there's the parents, and then there's grandma, and sometimes even great-grandma, right? And if you have all these people in your house and you're the only one that has symptoms, it would behoove you, I guess, for the safety of everybody else in your household to get tested so that they all know.
If you have COVID, if you're COVID positive, you're to isolate yourself, which means when you're home and you live with other people too, you're as best as possible, go in a bedroom by yourself, get your meals delivered at your doorstep, have a separate bathroom if you have. That's isolation. Don't go anywhere till 10 days after your last symptom. Quarantine if you've just been exposed to somebody who's positive. And we call a positive person a case person. But if you've been exposed, you're to quarantine yourself for 14 days to observe for symptoms, because you may develop symptoms, you may not develop symptoms, because if you develop symptoms, then you have to isolate yourself. So the difference is quarantine if you've been exposed, isolate if you're positive.
And it's also important to remember that still about 40 to 50% of people in all ages will have no symptoms at all. And that number actually goes much higher in school-age children and in adolescents. So That's why, in addition to looking for symptoms, you also need to be aware of potential exposures, because people who are symptom-free can also be transmitters of the virus unknowingly.